Hi guys, thanks for dropping by. I hope that you're tuning in with us for just a few minutes this evening on dealing with a lesson today coming from Anthony's lesson, actually Sunday morning. It's going to be a spin-off of that entitled Facing Your Giants. Sunday morning was appealed to the adult group and also your group, dealing with the giant that was, remember his name? His name was Og. Remember, Anthony had mentioned that there was different tribes of giants, different people in the land. Some were called the Nephilim, the Rephaim, or the Anakim. These were different giants that were mentioned in the Bible, and now we're going to talk about those. And you remember, the one that we come to mind usually, that we talk about, who was very large, very strong, who was a mighty man of war, was Goliath. And that's who I want us to talk about tonight. I want us to look at facing your giants. How big you are versus how big some things that we face in our life and what we can do with them. David and Goliath, a story that is known by most, not all of us, and what has happened there. I want to go ahead and set this up, that if you go ahead and be turning to 1 Samuel chapter 17, we'll be reading a few excerpts from the passage there, but also have some thoughts to go along with David and Goliath with a video that myself and Colby have helped with today. So I want you to go ahead, grab your Bibles. We're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 17, dealing with David and Goliath. And here we have Israel and we have the Philistine armies that are on two opposite sides of the mountain, or a hill. And in the middle there's a valley, the valley of Elah, we find in verse 2. So Saul is going to be king of Israel, and he's going to be out there with his men, and they're going to be on one side of the valley of Elah, and the Philistines are going to be in what they call battle array on the other side of the valley of Elah. And so every day a giant's going to come out. His name is Goliath, who's going to challenge the armies of Israel, as you recall. And everybody was very afraid. And everybody would run. They would not go out and challenge the giant, because there was that if whoever won, the other party was going to have to be their servants. So if Goliath beat the Israelites were going to have to be servants to the Philistines. Or if the Israelite won, then the Philistines would have to be servants to the Israelites. Nobody wanted this great challenge, because this was a mighty man of war. He was a giant of a man. I want to introduce you to somebody, though, who's going to take on the giant. Somebody who's going to be very young in his family. He's not old enough yet to go to war. You may already guessed it. His name is what? It's David. David is going to be a shepherd boy who's staying home at this juncture, tending his father's sheep. I want to introduce you to him. But notice some features about him. We're going to recall him in just a second. We're in 1 Samuel chapter 16, and starting in verse 12 is going to talk about how he was a ruddy young man. Ruddy simply means he was red-faced. It also could mean he was red-haired. He was a red man. He was bright eyes, and he was a good-looking young man. I want to introduce him to you at this time. So today's story is about David and Goliath, and we want to introduce you to David.
Hi, I'm David.
So David was a ruddy man. He also had red hair, but he was young. He was the 8th son of his father Jesse, but he tended his father's sheep, and he also had a slingshot that he used to protect the sheep, right here. So we've seen and been introduced to David now. David is going to come to the army, bringing food to his brothers. And his brothers are going to not be willing to go out and fight against the giant just as everybody else, because they're scared. David kind of challenges their thoughts and the people around him, saying, why are we letting a Philistine defy the armies of a living God? Well, he looks out and he sees this ginormous of a man, Goliath, coming out and saying these words. I want to introduce you to Goliath at this juncture and see what he says and how he responds to the army of Israel.
I am Goliath. I am from the armies of the Philistines. Israel, send a man to come out and fight me. And if you win, we will be your servants. But if I win, you will be our servants and serve us. I defy the armies of the living God. Ah!
Wow, that guy's tall. He's big. He's strong. And so you could understand why maybe the Israelites were scared of him. Why they didn't want to have anything to do with him, because they were afraid if they lost, they're going to have to serve the Philistines. That's definitely not what they wanted to do. So David goes to Saul and basically tells him that I have been delivered by God from the hand of a lion, from the hand of a bear. I have saved my father's sheep that I'm a shepherd boy over. I will be able to defeat this Philistine who defies the armies of the living God. I want you to notice something that we've already mentioned in Saul Goliath, but what it says about what his stature was. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting in verse 4, it says that a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines. His name was Goliath. He was from Gath. And his height was 6 cubits and a span. He's over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. 5,000 shekels. That's a heavy coat. He also had a bronze armor around his legs and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. And now the staff of his spear was like the weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels. Just the top of his spear weighed 600 shekels. Man, that's huge. That's big. And so he comes out to fight the army of Israel looking like this. David is not a very big young man at this juncture. Well, Saul's going to take him in order to fight this armed giant. Saul is going to give David his own armor. I want you to notice and see what this might have looked like on David trying to go out to battle against this Philistine. Notice what it looks like here. Saul agreed to David fighting for the army of Israel, but Saul insisted that he wear his armor. And so Saul gave him his spear. And he also gave him his shield so he could fight against the giant. And he also gave him his boots and his helmet to try to walk and to make sure that he could do the things to fight the giant, but they were too big for David. Too heavy. It wasn't... Oh. Wow, you see, David was not going to be able to fight a giant with Saul's armor. The shield was bigger than he was. His sword and his staff and his spear was too big for him to carry. His shoes were way too large. The helmet that he was supposed to wear, he couldn't hold it up with his head. He couldn't go and fight the giant like this, and David knew so. But David also knew that if he's going to fight giants in his life, he was going to be able to do so by having God on his side. And so what is David accustomed to? Well, if you know the song, David goes down to the babbling brook. And he's going to find 5 little stones. And one little stone went in the sling, and the sling went round and round, right? I want you to notice what David does for his armor, for his weaponry, and how he responds. All right, as he's getting ready to go fight the giant, he's looking for his weapons. He finds 5 stones that he's going to take in order to go to battle against the giant. You see a giant, Goliath, who has all this armor on, who is a mighty warrior, who calls out to the army of Israel every day to send a man to come and fight him. And David's willing. He knows that with God, he can do anything. David knows that God is going to prevail over anything that comes against him. And so he goes with his slingshot. He goes with his 5 smooth stones. And he goes out to meet the giant. And I want you to know what happens at this juncture. Let's take a look and see.
Yep. Do you come to me like a dog?
I come in the name of the Lord.
Wind up.
Whoa, you see how big the giant was compared to David. But yet David was fearless. He knew that God was fighting with him, that God was fighting for him, that he was going to be able to overcome because God had already delivered a bear and a lion into his hands, and he knew that his God would deliver this giant into the hands of him as well. And so we see that David goes out. He comes to the giant. He winds up. He put that rock in the sling. The sling went round and round, and this giant came tumbling. Not just a little boom. The giant came tumbling down. And we know that from the story, but also see what had happened after David launched the stone into the air and the giant came tumbling down.
No, him.
You see, there's nothing too big, too hard, too difficult for God. No matter your size, no matter how small, no matter how large you are, with God, all things are possible. With God on your side, you can do anything. With God's help, you can overcome any giant, no matter what that may be in your life. I hope that you remember that. As we have seen the story and now we have reenacted the story for you, think about how young David was. Think about what he was facing. Think about the weight of his shoulders and what was going to happen if he lost. All of Israel would have been subject to the Philistines and their commands. They would have been their servants. But David had faith, knowing that his God was able to deliver, knowing that he was going to be able to overcome and face his giants. You see, you may not be the biggest person right now in your grade, or at school, or at church, or even in your family. But with God, you can do great things. I pray for those things every day. I pray that you will do great and wonderful things through the work of God. I pray that you look ahead to your future and start now, relying on God for your help, because you're a great person already. You are great people, and you can do so much more with the help of God. Whatever giant you're facing right now, or that you will face in the future, know that with God on your side, you can overcome. Thanks for tuning in with us today on Facing Your Giants and the story about David and Goliath. I hope you have a blessed evening. It's good to see you, and I'll see you soon.